Hi everyone, it's Guillaume from Startup Basecamp. Welcome to the Tech for Climate podcast. During the show, you will have the opportunity to meet the best climate tech founders, investors, and experts from both Silicon Valley and around the globe. They will share with you their stories and personal journeys into this growing and exciting industry, giving you some insight into the ecosystems that help you to take part in the fight against climate change and benefit from the opportunities it can represent. The podcast is divided in two small interviews. So in the first part, you will get to know our speakers, their perspectives on the climate crisis and how climate tech is changing the game. The second part of the discussion will be for members of our community who will learn the speakers' secret sauce on how to and share with you their unique expertise on topics such as fundraising, management, strategy, and so on, to help you to become a better leader in your field. So before we start, I would like to quickly share what we are doing at Startup Basecamp to support climate tech founders in accessing resources and gaining visibility with investors they seek. Our initiatives include a membership-based community platform offering access to a dedicated Slack group with a growing number of founders, experts, and investors from around the world, and a series of exclusive content such as interviews, weekly job listings, events, and our quarterly online pitch of night opportunity. But more than a place where you can learn, exchange, and grow, we are building a matchmaking service to facilitate connections between our members and top investors and experts in the field. And soon, alongside with other top investors, we will be launching a small fund to co-invest in the growth and acceleration of our members. Finally, all of this is possible because of your support and donations. We are a small self-funded team and we want you to be part of this collective movement against climate change. So please share one episode with a friend and subscribe to the channels. As an added bonus, we will plant a tree for each of our subscribers each time we reach 1,000 new fans or donors. Do not hesitate to connect with me via social media or email Guillaume at Startup Basecamp. Thanks a lot for listening. I hope to get in touch with you soon. And now, let's go for the show. Hi everyone, in this new episode of Founder Series, we are sitting down with Benjamin Ng, co-founder at AromatEco, who were the winner of our last quarterly pitch competition back in December 2021. AromatEco is bioengineering micro-organisms by giving them the ability to produce carbon-negative chemicals. They help household brands become more sustainable by providing them with renewable flavors and fragrances solutions. In the long run, their vision is to decarbonize the entire petrochemical industry with a nature-based solution. I was excited to speak with Ben, an incredible young bioengineer from Imperial College who is passionate about dancing and gaming and who even found himself dancing in a Mick Jagger music video clip. After several startup failures from which he learned a lot, Ben met his co-founders who were studying and developing the microorganism in the labs prior to the launch of AromatEco in late 2020. In this episode, we will learn more about the chemical industry landscape and its heavy impact on the planet. Together, we will cover the initial challenges of building their technology and nailing down the mechanism to genetically modify bacteria to produce targeted chemicals at scale. We will also go deeper into the potential of their unique technology to reduce the cost of chemical production by 50% with a natural-based solution, their approach of a decentralized production model, and their go-to-market strategy, initially targeting high-value chemicals. Finally, Benjamin will share the next steps necessary in achieving their vision and how you can get involved. During the second part of the talk, Benjamin will give his secret sauce for early-stage founders looking to fundraise and the importance of going out of the labs to network. Finally, he will share some of the books he learned from and his own work-life balance tips for busy founders. Benjamin, welcome to the show. Hi Ben, welcome to the Tech for Climate podcast. I'm super happy to have you here with us today, especially because last time we spoke, it was back in December and you were the winner of the quarterly pitch competition that we did with Startup Basecamp. So very excited to dig and dive more into AromatEco.
Yep. Hi, Guy. Uh, Really excited to join this podcast. Uh, Quite a number of things has changed in the last month, but yeah, excited to be here.
Fantastic. I'm excited to learn more about all of those updates and as usual, before we start, can you give us a 30-second intro about AromatEco?
Yep. At AromatEco, we are bioengineering microorganisms and giving them the ability to produce carbon negative chemicals. So that's basically the pitch. Um, we are targeting the flavor and fragrance industry sector first before with scale that we target lower value chemicals like petrochemical replacements, and that's the whole goal is to decarbonize the chemical industry.
That's so exciting. So, but let's start from the top. As usual, we always put the guest in the center of the interview as the human, as we like to say. So, can you tell us a bit more about your personal story, background? What are you passionate about? I mean, what do you do and love to do besides building Aromatico? What makes you feel inspired or like your best self? I mean, who is Ben?
Right. So I recently graduated from Imperial 2 years ago from integrated masters in bioengineering. Um, in uni, I started a startup, and I realized that that's where I want to go in life. I want to build businesses. I want to see something that I create by myself become huge. Unfortunately, the one that I started in university didn't work out, and then I once I graduated, I started another one, and that's how I got a visa to stay in the UK for 2 years under a startup visa. That one unfortunately failed as well in the pandemic, and it gave me a lot of hard lessons to learn. And during that time, I found Aromatico, and I found Johnny, and I found Patrick, and I joined them, and we became who we are now. And sorry, what was the question again? Like the rest of the question?
So the rest of the question is like, what
God,
do you like to do besides building Aromatico? Who
what I
are
like to
you?
do
Are you
besides
passionate about? I mean, I don't know, like dancing, art. Do you have like any passion on the
ah
side? What is exciting you besides working and building the company?
yeah, sorry man, I've just been talking about startups like for the last 2 years. I forgot about all these. Yeah. So I dance. That reminded me. I dance. I used to dance in the university team. I play basketball as well. I'm a huge gamer, but like I play games on the side with my friends. That's how I socialize with my friends. But I'm mostly quite, I wouldn't say, I don't know if I call myself artistic, but I do dance and I have been in plays, and I act as well. I think the most notably notable thing I've done in that area is I have been in a Mick Jagger music video as a dancer slash actor. Dancer slash extra. Yeah. So that's the probably most interesting thing about me in that area. Other than that, before I got into Imperial, I think the thing that made me stand out in university applications for Imperial was that I love to tinker around with stuff. So I used to build a whole lot of random things. One was a light suit that would flash according to the music, how it sounds. And if you know who Wolverine is, like the Marvel character,
Mm-hmm.
I built his mechanical claws from like it's made of metal with springs and stuff, and I could retract it and extend it as well. So I was a huge tinkerer, and then when I got into uni, I got into dance and acting and all that stuff.
Exciting. So you see, more than just building a startup, you have also like very cool and unusual stuff on the side that you like to do. So you mentioned just at first when you started the interview that the succession of the two different companies that you started and then that you had to stop and in a way failed. What did you learn from that experience that in a way you could bring with you into starting Aromatico?
Um, Co-founders make a huge difference. Like that is the number one thing that I learned. if like, and at the start, when a lot of mentors or a lot of workshop teachers or people that I meet in the startup world, when they tell me, most of the time when startup fails, it fails because of infighting, like, or not even infighting, just founders not being aligned. And I find that to be really, really true after those two startups. And now I'm seeing it in a few different startups as well, and that's why they failed as well. Um, it's because when the founders are not aligned with what they want to do, it generally just falls apart. And that's the number one thing that I was looking for when I joined AromatEco. So I know my two co-founders, Patrick and Johnny, they are both really, really passionate about AromatEco and what they want to achieve with it. And that's one of the main reasons why I decided to join them as well.
Okay, so you mentioned also a very interesting point regarding the importance of the climate aspect of the business that is for you in a way less as a priority as building something that makes sense for the future. If I and correct me
Mm-hmm.
if I'm wrong. Can you tell me a bit more maybe that why and how do you think that in a way this climate aspect of it makes sense and do you feel any like motivation or extra motivation to in a way get involved into that or by building a solution that at scale could have a potential impact on the climate crisis that we have today?
So I think I I know it's a bit weird from coming from a climate tech founder that I'm not really um it doesn't radiate as like the climate problem doesn't radiate as much to me because I know there is a problem, like it's there, and we need solutions to those problems. And I don't really see it as, we need to build these companies to try to solve those problems. And it's more like to solve those problems, these companies have to be built. So, and that's how I see it, that this thing is the future. There's no way in hell that these climate tech companies are not going to be there in the future. And that's what really drives deeper what I believe in. It's We don't really need to change the way we do things. Like humans don't really need to change our behaviors on what we do. It's more like we need to change the way of what is being done right now. So old systems have to go. Whatever that's there, like decades old systems, they all have to go. And now is the time that you see all these climate tech companies coming out, and those climate tech companies are actually the ones replacing those old systems into new systems that are more sustainable and are more efficient. And that itself would help with climate change.
Makes sense. So before we start going into details about AromatEco, we'd like to zoom out and get a little bit more like the context about the landscape that AromatEco is like evolving on. So here we're talking about the chemical production landscape today. You guys are intending to replace the traditional way they're currently produced. Can you tell us a bit more about this chemical in itself? What are the major ones that are produced today? What are the impact and how are they in a way manufactured? By who do you see like any like big players? What are the currently alternative existing to them?
So the main three chemicals or the main groups are methanol, ammonia, and high value chemicals. Those three are the ones, like three groups are the ones that are polluting the environment, if you were to call that. Um, Generally, the whole chemical industry consumes about 11% of global energy, and with that, they emit 7.5% of global greenhouse gases, and that's about 4 billion tons of greenhouse gases. Um, and it's insane because it's also going to become the largest driver of global oil consumption by 2030. So if you imagine how much fuel all the cars in the world take and how much fuel all the flights in the world take, the chemical industry is going to use more fuel in 2030 than both of those things.
What are the application of those chemicals in our daily life? I mean, for anyone who's listening to the show today, uh, you mentioned like those three groups. What are the application in there, and where do you think that there's a spot there?
Yeah, so those three groups, they are considered base chemicals, so they will be used to make other different chemicals, which would then in turn be used in almost everything you see actually in your daily life. And these are what I like to call like the silent killers in climate change. Is
Mm-hmm.
because you use your shampoo, you use your bars of soap, you use your chair, your furniture, everything that we consume as a human has some form of chemical being added to it or being used in its production process. So it's everywhere. It's just that we don't see it, and that's why it's so important to target this industry. Mm,
Well, those chemicals are at the base of other chemicals. For instance, if you take like labels of any, even like in the food industry, like you look at all of the additives that you can find in your own food, would those chemicals like be at the base of creating those ones that you see today? So it's really, as you mentioned, like the behind the scene, the backstage of the chemical industry that you guys are looking at.
yes. So we are not that far down yet. So these base chemicals are usually like lower in value. We are currently where we want to get in the future, but
Mm-hmm.
currently we are at a very high value chemical. So those base chemicals probably sell for about $1 per kilo or 50 cents per kilo or even less than that. What we want to try to where we're at right now is selling chemicals that are worth around a few $100s per kilo. And where we want to go as we scale is to be able to scale the technology in such a way where it's commercially viable for us to start selling chemicals that are around $1 a kilo or less.
I think it's a good segue to go and dive into more like the specific or the subcategories, as you guys mentioned that AromatEco is now targeting the what we call the flavors and fragrance part of the market. Can you give us a little bit of overview of that specific subsection of the chemical industry market in itself? Like how are those base chemical produced? Where do they come from usually? Um, if any, there's like any big players there. I guess you can divide them as of today already in like what we call the eco-sustainable one and the one that are issued from the petroleum and oil-based, production.
So actually, I should have mentioned this just now as well. Chemicals are mostly, I should have started with this actually. Chemicals are mostly produced by synthesizing fossil fuels. So that's the main way, and that's why it's so cheap to produce chemicals, and that's why they can sell it so cheaply because fossil fuel is cheap, oil is cheap. In the flavor and fragrance industry, it's also synthesized through fossil fuels, but the natural, like there's two categories. There is the non-natural, the artificial version, the synthesized version, and the natural version. So the synthesized version are all synthesized through fossil fuels, but the natural version is extracted through nature. So tropical agriculture, which they have to cut down trees and have a plot of land and grow the crop, and then cut them down and then harvest it and grow some more, and that's pretty unsustainable as well. What happens is after they do that in the supply chain, these manufacturers would then sell raw materials, the chemicals as raw materials to flavor and fragrance companies. And these flavor and fragrance companies would then mix and match these raw materials together to make a flavor profile to sell to end users, not sorry, end users, and manufacturers like FMCG brands like Unilever to be able to use that flavor profile or smell profile to incorporate in their end product, like your soap or your shampoo or any sweets that you eat, and sell it to customers. So it's basically like cooking in a way. You have the raw ingredients, you take the raw ingredients, you cut them up into different ratios, and then you mix them together to form like a sauce, and then you just sell that sauce to the chef, which would then put the sauce and the chicken and everything, and they plate it nicely, and they sell it to customers. That's basically the flavor and fragrance industry. And because of how huge the chemical industry is, this flavor and fragrance subsector, people may think that it's small, but it's actually not small as well. It's worth actually $38 billion, the whole global flavor and fragrance industry. For the natural flavor and fragrance industry, it's worth about $4 billion, and the area, like just two chemicals that we're working on right now, is worth already 106 million, like the entire market. So it's pretty huge.
A bit about now deeper about AromatEco. If you can tell us a bit more like the story behind it, like how did you meet your co-founders, and what is or are the initial problems you have identified and that you are trying to solve with the company. Why did you choose to go to that market at first in itself?
So how did I meet my co-founder? We were both actually, yeah, that brings me back to the start actually with dancing. I met him before university started. We met at a dance society meetup, and that's how I first got to know him as a friend. And then throughout university, I was his flatmate in university, and once we graduated, I didn't know about his startup at first. I didn't know about AromatEco. And then um, once my second startup, like, I'm going to fast forward a bit. Once my second startup failed when I was still in the UK, it was the pandemic. I didn't really know what to do in my life. I reflected a lot on what I should be doing. Should I get a job? Should I continue, working on a startup? Then during that time, I felt, I was quite useless. I wasn't doing anything at home. And I reached out to Johnny, which is my co-founder, the one that I met at the start of university. I reached out to him and asked him about his startup, because I think 6 months before he told me he was working on something, and he was trying to get some advice from me of things like that about his pitch. And then yeah, I remembered, like, right after that startup failed, 2 months after, I approached him and I asked him, could I just join you guys and help you guys build what you're building? Because I really think what you're building is really cool, and I really think that's the future. And I just want to be there to do something with my time, and I'll help you with your business side. Because at that time, I also knew the business person that was with them has left the company, and so they had a gap in business skills, because Johnny and Patrick are both academics, and they mainly work on the tech and not the business side. So they accepted me in as sort of like a part-time role, and I was on probation as well. So I told them, let's see how it goes, if whether I'm a good fit for you guys, and if you guys are a good fit for me, because obviously the co-founders have to work really well together. After 3 months, they formally, surprisingly, accepted me into the team, and they a few more months after, we realized that with this team being like that, a lot of things were being accelerated, and so we decided to stay as a team and then incorporate the company together. And the rest is, well, not really history, about it's the beginning of everything of AromatEco. Other than that, I can speak for Johnny and Patrick. Both of them, before I came in, they worked on the tech for about 2 years already, and it's actually all part of Johnny's PhD. He really liked how you can genetically modify a bacteria, he's a biologist, and he likes genetically modifying bacteria, and he's just interested in that area. And he's at first they were trying to create chemicals, like any chemicals, low grade chemicals with bacteria. Um, After a few tries, we found out, like, during the whole process of how we got into flavor and fragrance is because, as I said before, chemicals that are being produced using microbes are not really commercially viable right now, especially for the lower value chemicals. So that's why we started targeting flavor and fragrance chemicals, because they are higher in value, and thus we can start selling them straight away. And that's why he's working on flavor and fragrances right now. Before that, in his PhD, he has really managed to create around 480 DNA constructs and around 24 different chemicals before we found the right chemical to go into.
Mm-hmm. So can you tell us a bit more about the process in itself? Like how did they select those microbes, bacteria? What's happening? Like today, you mentioned that they are modifying their genes, and then how do you do that? Like how do you select them? Why do you choose those ones? And then how does it work in the process? And for people like me that doesn't know that much about it, like how can you explain us simply like how the production process and the in a way the discovery process works?
Um, so there's a lot of reading about past literature and what has been done, what has been not done, what can be done, what can be not done. But generally speaking, on a cellular level, um, these microbes called cyanobacteria, they are introduced a new gene. So you know how your gene codes for your hair color, your hair
Mm-hmm.
length, your eye color, all these things. We can
Mm-hmm.
introduce new genes for these microorganisms to produce certain chemicals. So they already by themselves take in CO2 to use CO2 in photosynthesis to produce mainly food for themselves. So we can introduce new genes during that process to get them to make food from themselves, but also get them to make chemicals for us. And the way we do it, which I'm not sure if other companies do it, but I think it's special. The way we do it is because our tech is modular. It's like Lego bricks. So all we have to do is work on specific genes that code specific enzymes,
Mm-hmm.
right? And and then we can patent those individual enzymes that we work on. And depending on how we mix and match those enzymes, we can produce different chemicals. And that's why, with maybe three enzymes, we can already make around 30 plus, 40 plus different chemicals.
I mean, 30 plus, 40 plus different like base of a new flavor or an existing flavors, correct?
It's the individual chemicals that will be used in the flavor profile. In Wait, let me try to explain this a bit better. So we produce these individual chemicals
Mm-hmm.
that will be used as ingredients in the taste profile. So let's say the F&F, so I call them F&F, flavor and fragrance companies. They will be taking many different individual chemicals and putting them together in different ratios to form different tastes. So the smell or the taste of an orange probably has, let's say, for example, five different chemicals that are in there, and we produce those five different chemicals for the taste of an orange. We don't mix them together. We don't give you the taste of an orange. We just give
Mm-hmm.
you the individual chemicals,
Okay.
and that's what we do with the microbes.
And each microbes are producing one chemicals per se based on the gene modification that you have been
Yep.
introducing in them. Okay.
So yeah, we introduce the gene into the microbes, and then all we do with the microbes is we stick them into a giant fermenter. Um, so if you can imagine how beer or wine is being made at the start, it's
Yeah.
fermented in a large tank. We
Yeah.
do the same thing. The tank will probably be transparent because they need sunlight and they need LED lights. So it's a huge transparent tank. We just stick them in there, grow them, and then they will produce the chemicals continuously. And we have a method for extracting the chemicals continuously as well.
So how do you extract that? How do
Uh,
you separate in a way the microbe and the chemicals that is the resulting of the, in a way, the natural living process of that microbes?
so we theoretically and possibly we tested it once, and we think that it's theoretically possible is to separate them through just condensation, because the chemicals that we're working with are very volatile, so they become gases very easily. I think that's a very simple way to say that. They become gases at room temperature, and all we need to do is to condense them down, and then from there we have the pure version of the chemicals. And we want to do it this way because the way it's being done in industry right now is they grow the bacteria, and while it's producing it will reach a certain amount that they want them to produce, and then they will they will batch kill all the microbes to extract the chemical out. And that's just in my opinion like a waste of time, because you're going to do it batch by batch, and it takes a long time for the microbes to grow. So in that way, it makes our process is a bit more, it's a different in a way, because we can continuously do it because we're working with different types of chemicals.
Mm-hmm. And those microbes, you can find, I guess, like anywhere. I mean, naturally, where do you find those microbes? Like, how do you collect the first one that you decide to then modify? Then I guess you put them, as you mentioned, into this tank, this bioreactor, and then you launch the process. How do you source those initial microbes, and how did you select those ones as the one that were in a way the easiest to modify it based on the needs of the chemical that you're able to that you're seeking to produce?
So we are actually working with two different microbes. The first one is actually just E. coli. So it's the bacteria that gives you food poisoning, basically. And we work with E. coli because E. coli the build test cycle for E. coli is a lot faster than the other microbe that we're working with, which is called cyanobacteria, and they are actually comparable to algae. The other name for cyanobacteria is called blue-green algae. They grow in lakes. They have a blue-green color to them, and they photosynthesize. And sometimes they almost kill. They're like toxic to some lakes because they grow uncontrollably, right? And that's actually what we want in production, because we want them to grow well. But yeah, as I was explaining, we use E. coli at first. It's because the build test cycle is faster, and then once we confirm certain things in E. coli, we then shift it over to cyanobacteria, just because cyanobacteria grows slower than E. coli. And with cyanobacteria, that's where we actually have this carbon negative process where it takes CO2 out of the air and it produces chemicals.
Okay. So, how long it takes your team to put this first prototype, and where are you now, in which stage in terms of development? I mean, it's still like, I guess, very lab-based solution that you have. Where are you at now?
We are currently in still the lab phase, still the lab scale of stuff. So whatever we're producing is still in very minute quantities, but we have proven that we can build it. From my experience, Johnny, to build to make these two new chemicals that we're trying to make, there is a three-step process. One is to confirm that those individual genes, as I mentioned before, works by themselves. The next one is to confirm whether it works together in a cell. And then the third part is to confirm whether it works in cyanobacteria. So the first part so far, to confirm whether both individual genes worked, it took Johnny about 2 months to get to confirm that, and he calls it the bioconversion. So we can make the chemicals through bioconversion. The second part of it, where we have to confirm it in a cell, it's probably going to take Johnny about another 1.5 months to 2 months to confirm whether it works in a cell as a whole, and we call that de novo biosynthesis of the chemical. And after that, he has to transfer the whole thing into a cyanobacteria, and that is probably going to take even longer. I would say about 4 or 5 months.
Okay, so
And so,
the whole process is it about like from the need of a base chemical to when you guys in a way master the production process was the time average there.
it's about 6 7 months to produce a new chemical.
And as of today, you guys are able to produce how many chemicals you said? Around 30?
So Johnny has been able to produce 24 different chemicals.
Okay.
He has produced 24 different chemicals, and that's attributing to, I think I should mention that if we already have the genes, we don't have to go through the first part. We can just skip to the second part. So it cuts down a lot of time there because of how we can mix and match our genes.
Yeah.
And mix and match our enzymes to produce different chemicals. So he has produced around 24 different ones in the span of 2 years.
So, can you tell us a bit more about the current and expected economics of AromatEco? I mean, what is the business model that you guys have behind that? What is like the cost of production, eventually like the margin if you have some ideas already? And how would it look like this full-scale infrastructure? I mean, are you seeing that production will be completely centralized in one country, or would be like more like decentralized model with more like smaller reactors to in a way to provide your customers directly? Can you tell us a bit more about all of this?
Mm-hmm. So right now, the aim is to be a B2B wholesaler of these chemicals or manufacturer. So we manufacture it and then we sell the chemicals to maybe suppliers, traders, or the F&F companies themselves. Right now, it costs around $100 per kilo to make these like our first few chemicals, and then over time it'll gradually decrease down to $50 per kilo, like in the next 2 years or so, and then to $20 per kilo in the next 3 to 4 years. We're trying to aim to get it as low as we can, so we can go into those bigger markets I spoke about. Um, and we would actually be selling the chemicals at around 50% cheaper than market chemicals right now in the natural side of the natural market. So let's say our first chemical would sell for $500 per kilo. We're looking to sell it around $250 per kilo. And so the margins, as you can tell, if we take $100 to produce it, it's going to be quite high. But that margin will probably not be profits. It will probably be reinvested into the company, into the R&D to build other chemicals. So with that, we need to partner with companies that already have the infrastructure to grow these microbes in the first 2 3 years or so, and then hopefully we'll be able to raise enough funding to build our own manufacturing plant. I'm like touching wood right now. If all of those goes really bad, there is the second option of generating revenue through our IP. So we may license our IP to other manufacturing companies to make whatever that we discovered.
Mm-hmm.
So right now we're in lab scale. The next scale we have to hit is the 1 liter scale. So it's in like a small little tank. And then the next one you have to hit is a 10 liter scale. So it's a little bit bigger tank. But after that, we need the help of people that already have the infrastructure in place, so we can scale, or at least, yeah, we can scale to around 100 liters to 1,000 liters per tank. And we have to do that we can't do that with the manufacturers that we want to partner with first. We have to do it with like a test run with other pilot partners. So something like CPI, the Center for Process Innovation, and they really have the infrastructure, so we can test out whatever we need to test out with them, get the numbers correct before we approach companies in this field for us to partner with them to make our stuff, because we got to get all like the numbers for how we should grow the microbes, like the temperature, the pressure, the flow, the nutrients that it needs. All of those has to be right before we approach the partners. Um, and after that, as I said before, we are going to try to build our own plant. So something like what our competitor is doing right now. Um, our own plant with our own systems. I haven't really thought about whether we want to do it centralized or decentralized, but I feel that a decentralized model would be a lot better, because that would cut down on transportation and shipping the product, and that's also one main cost about on keeping carbon emissions low. And I think that's what Solugen and another company who's trying to do the same thing is doing, and they have these bio forgeries all around the world. So in Singapore and in Europe, in the US. I hope that's what we're able to achieve next time as well. And yeah, the scale is to go international with this, and to be the ones that are going to replace um, existing companies that use fossil fuels to make chemicals. And um, actually, can I touch upon like competitors a bit, because this is something that's really important that I feel I should say, because a lot of people keep asking me, aren't you scared about competitors taking away whatever you guys have done, because they're really so big. But the thing is, you got to understand the chemical industry is huge. It's, if we are able to have multiple oil and gas companies like Shell, BP, Exxon, Petronas, and they all literally do the same thing. They mine and they extract oil from the ground and they sell it to people. Why can't we have multiple biochemical companies? And that's essentially what I think this space will be in the future. There's going to be multiple of us targeting different chemicals that already have a huge market, and we all can exist at the same time internationally.
So I think that's a good segue. Like, let's dig a little bit deeper. I mean, who are the competitors today? You have the traditional one, and then you have, I would say, new waves of tech companies like Solugen that you mentioned. Who are the other ones that are in a way jumping into the market and doing same as you? And my other question would be like, how defensible is your process of production? You mentioned some patents, but what is, I mean, how can you be, ensure that you won't be, even though you see a fragmentation of the market, which is interesting to have like multiple players, but how can you ensure to, for instance, investors or others that you guys will be able to take a sufficient piece of the market as well for the company?
Like the upcoming companies, the biochemical companies, I know there is Solugen, there is a company called Photonol, a company called Phycobloom. And I would say, is our tech defensible? Yes, it very much is, because all of us are working on different types of chemicals. And so to produce those different types of chemicals, you need R&D, because it's entirely new. It's an entirely new way of making those chemicals. And so for them to copy us, they will need to go through the same R&D, the same amount of time before they can copy us, which by then we have already patented something to do with those chemicals, or to do with making those chemicals. And so, that's one thing. Patenting our chemicals is one thing. Another thing is the way we are approaching this is very different from how our competitors are approaching this. They are trying to target lower value chemicals first. And it's depending on how much funding they get, it may be sustainable or unsustainable to their business. because they have to get, they have to raise millions and millions of pounds, like few hundred millions of pounds to be able to build their own factory or set up a pilot plant to prove that it's real. So, for instance, Solugen, no, not Solugen, sorry, Photonol, they have been in this game for around 11 years, and even till now, they have not been able to make the main chemical that they want to sell commercially viable enough for them to sell. So it's not, the production method is not cheap enough for them to sell yet. And just only currently they've managed to raise a few hundred millions of pounds to be able to build their first pilot plant, which would take, I think, a few more years. So the whole process for them to start selling what they want to sell will probably take another 6-7 years. And where we are approaching this, everybody is going to the same destination but in a different way. How we want to approach this is by approaching higher value chemicals first to make sure that our company is sustainable, that we are generating revenue and profits, reinvesting that into the business, surviving the whole thing until we are able to touch on lower value chemicals, let's say 10 years into the future.
So
And that's
basically the
yeah,
Roadster, Tesla Roadster approach before building in the future the family car. You're going for the high
yes,
value market.
yep,
Makes sense.
yep.
So just before we conclude this first part of the interview, what keeps you guys up at night right now, and what's next for AromatEco?
What keeps us up at night? I think Johnny, what keep him up at night is the anxiety of his machines failing if he needs something important. But uh, nowadays, currently we're in the process of fundraising, so it's that keeps me up at night. How do I talk to investors? How do I negotiate something really well with them? Um, what gets us to wake up in the morning early to get excited about working on this is that we really see a future on this, and it's not only us that see a future on this right now. It's a lot of different people started approaching us and validating what we're doing, and so we see progress there, and it's exhilarating, knowing that the thing that you believe in is what other people believe in as well, and that's what at least keeps me waking up every single morning wanting to work on this. um where we are right now, I'm not sure if I should say this. Maybe I should just say this. We are currently accepted into a really huge biotech accelerator, and that's the next exciting step for us. And then I would say going through the accelerator will really speed up a lot of things for us, and hopefully by July we can start approaching investors to raise a £2 million seed round, which we would hope to close by December.
Okay, exciting that. And where is located the accelerator? In the Bay Area?
In US.
Yeah.
So because we haven't signed all the documents yet. Still talking to them about how we should do certain things.
Okay.
But yeah,
I mean, if the one that I'm thinking about, I think it's going to be a great opportunity for you guys for sure. And excited to hear more about it in the future when you guys are done with the paperwork. Would love to know
yeah.
more about it. Quick last question on my side. I mean, what is your personal opinion about the climate crisis? I mean, you mentioned that a little bit about it, but I mean, what would you say, what would be your words to people who are afraid of all the terrible news and already visible consequences that we have about climate change? Are we doomed, or what would you tell them?
I would say the first thing that came to my head was be afraid. So I don't know if you watched the movie Don't Look Up,
Sure.
but that's basically what's happening with the climate crisis. Like, humans, we are really bad at predicting the future. We're just really, really bad at predicting the future. And so, let's say like I have an exam in 2 months. I can't predict how I'm gonna feel in 2 months. So I'm gonna enjoy myself now. But 1 week before the exam, I'll go, oh shit, I need to study for this. But by that time, it's a bit too late. I can't study the whole subject or multiple subjects for a week for exam that's coming in a week. And that's what will happen to our climate if we don't do something about it now. So we have to be very, very afraid and very, very, very aware that we need to put in the change now, because for like startups like mine, it's going to take 10 years to reach where we want to reach, and that's a long time. But the climate, the earth is not going to wait for us. It's going to hit us, and it's already hitting us now. It's just that we don't really notice it yet. So like I think I can speak for Malaysia. There's just this massive flood that just came in that I've never seen before, that all my friends were affected with, that we have not seen in like 20 years. Like all my life I've not seen a flood this bad. And the reason why people don't pay attention to it is because it comes, people get shocked, and then once it goes away, it's just normal again. So yeah, but that's not the way we should treat the climate crisis right now. We should be, as I said, afraid, and maybe not afraid is not the right word, but be very aware that these things are coming, and it's going to come more frequently in the future if we don't do something about it now.
And potentially, like take each of us at our own level, little steps towards it by supporting people like you, supporting your organization, reading about it, speaking about it, and maybe doing a little bit of lobbying towards our government. I mean, there's so many things to be done, and I think it's now or never the time to start moving towards that, and it's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
That's for sure. So how can the community of listeners can help you?
How can they help me? I think by buying more products that are eco-friendly and sustainable. People, when they use products, they are not aware where the products come from, right? And so we just keep using them without realizing, and that's why it's a silent killer to the environment. So it's not only just products, it's the place that you live in as well, your house. Construction contributes to a lot of greenhouse gas emissions as well, and it's all these things that on the back end needs to change, but on the front end, consumers need to be aware about it as well. I think one of the difference that's going to happen soon in this space is that companies on the back end, like that used to be invisible to the public eye, would start being very visible, and they'll start raising their brand awareness, and maybe in a form of approval seals. So consumers know that when they use, let's say, products that are made by AromatEco, they know that it's coming from a sustainable source, and they're helping the planet. And that's one of the ways, I guess, consumers can help, because for these big companies to start using AromatEco's products or to start changing is from the consumer side. So consumers can, buy more eco-friendly products, buy more sustainable products, and that's the way you drive everything. They don't have to change their behavior really, really badly. You just have to pick the right products. That's it.
So where do you find those right products?
Where do I find those right products?
Any recommendation, any places? We're trying to put together a little green store as well to showcase different type of products, but it's not easy to find them in a way.
I would say it's not easy. Yeah. Even for me, it's not really easy because there's a lot of greenwashing going on right now. There needs to be more awareness on that part, and there are a few startups that are trying to do that. They're trying to group all these eco-friendly products in one area and then show you even how much carbon you get to reduce with them.
Yeah, so if you know
there's
any
even
names or any interesting people or resource, like don't hesitate to send them our ways, or we will be definitely interested to look at that. Any question that I did not ask you that I should have for this first part of the interview?
I don't think so. I think you covered quite a lot. You covered so much that I just kept rambling on about stuff.
Okay, Ben, thank you so much for taking the time with us today, tackling this I would say very interesting, but also like still like a lot of shadows for me for this whole chemical market. And I think you really helped us to make it a bit more clear today
Mm.
how it works. I feel that there's an amazing opportunity that you guys are tackling there
Thank
and
you.
launching. So thank you so much for joining us today, and hopefully we can hear about all the good news coming out of you and your company in the next few months.
Thank you so much to you as well for like giving us a platform to talk about this.
Hi, it's Guillaume again. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show. As I said, do not hesitate to share an episode with a friend. Also, if you value the work we do for the climate tech ecosystem, here is how you can contribute to it. Today, I'm asking for your support and a donation or sponsorship to make the work of our self-funded team more viable. Even a small contribution means a lot to us. In any case, I will invite you to subscribe to our channels and visit our website startupbasecamp.org to discover more episodes like this one. And get your membership to access all our members' exclusive content. So remember, all of this is possible because of your support and donation. And we want you to be part of this collective movement against climate change. Let's keep in touch, and I hope you will enjoy our next show with us.